I just wish to make a couple of observations which relate largely to my own locality of Stroud, but I come to help the Minister, not to in any way criticise, because I think we have to recognise that this is not something about party politics. It's about the way in which we need to deal with this housing problem, and we need to deal with it now. And it is a plea, and this follows a letter that has been sent by my own local authority, Stroud District, on behalf of both myself and the Honourable Member for the Cotswolds, who doesn't necessarily sign up to all in the letter, but we felt it important that it's been sent to the department so they understand some of the issues we're facing. And it is about the way in which the housing revenue account now is almost acting bizarrely against the very thing that the government wants to do, which is to build more houses and to make sure that we have houses that are fit for the people who desperately need rented accommodation. And the two pleas are around, firstly, as my honourable friend has already said, adjusting or possibly removing the current borrowing cap so that Stroud District Council can undertake further prudential borrowing that's consistent with its 30-year business plan. And on the back of that, that would enable the council to use 100% of its right to buy capital receipts to build these new council homes. Stroud District Council is not unique, but it is unusual in as much it now owns its own stock. We've bid £98 million for the self-financing regime, which the government kindly made available. So this is a question of Stroud District Council wanting to use its own resources in the most appropriate ways. It's had a 5-year capital programme, building some 236 council homes, which is, for a small area like Stroud, is a not insignificant commitment and contribution. And that has not in any way crowded out the private sector. It's been alongside the private sector. These homes are of a high standard. They're taking people out of fuel poverty. Their lifetime arrangements mean that these quality homes are homes that people want to live in. It's a myth that people end up in council housing because they have no other alternatives. These are very much bid after homes, and ones that we would want to see alongside other forms of affordable homes. Local business, again, is very supportive of this and highlights the need for housing to be given a very high priority, because that's a simple reason why people can live and work in the Stroud District. So we estimate locally we need 425 new units per annum, and effectively at the moment that would be all the units being provided. Currently, though, of the 430 new homes built in 2015-2016, the last date for which we have figures, only 120 of those were affordable. That's 28%. So we're well below our level of need, and it's a question of not meeting the demand that is currently there. We've got 2,525 households on the housing register, with around 440 new lettings of social and affordable housing each year. Rent levels in the private sector are increasing much quicker than we would want, and that of course is again leading to people looking for alternatives to the private sector, one of which of course is council housing, and that's particularly true of younger people. Now in Stroud, the average wage to house price ratio is now 1 to 10. That's above the national average of 1 to 8, which means that fewer people are getting into owner-occupiership, and that again is a reason why people are looking for alternatives in terms of rented accommodation. The standards of the private rented sector, dare I say, in Stroud is not good necessarily, and that again drives people to look at the ways in which social housing, in particular council housing, can provide the answer. And there are some elements, of course, that we would always want to provide in terms of extra care, which again needs to be mentioned. It's not just about younger people, younger families, it's about providing the social care element, which only really the council can do because of the need to recognise how they have to provide that level of supply. We've had a 30% increase over the last year in terms of homelessness applications, and that again is a driver. Now, one thing in particular for the Minister to address is the local housing allowance. I mean, in previous debate I have argued that the simple fact that Stroud is included within Gloucester and the Forest of Dean does cause us problems because we are a higher rented area. And that means that because the local housing allowance is based on the average, people paying rents have to make good the difference between what they're allowed and again what the benefit system permits. So this is an appeal. It's an appeal to the government to work with us to allow us to carry on with our council housing programme. We've got over 5,000 homes allocated in terms of the local plan, but sadly too few of those are coming forward. If the local authority could play a bigger part, we would bring forward those homes. We would make sure that we're able to deal with this housing shortage, which I'm sure all sides of the House would agree is real and pertinent at the moment. So we need a range of housing, and as part of that housing we need council housing. We believe that from all that the council has done, and it's a cross-party agreement, the local Conservatives support this programme. They were instrumental. We are a home council and they have been willing to stay with it over a longer period of time. So we really do need help with either the housing revenue account cap to be removed or at least relaxed so we can get back onto this programme. The sad thing is, because of the cap, it's likely we're going to have to pay back to the government £1 million in unapplied right to buy receipts in 2016-17. The Minister looks a bit querulous at it, but that is the reality. If you haven't got the ability to match fund, then you pay back the money from the receipts that you have got. So, I mean, again, the Minister, I'm not expecting him to say there's a magic solution, but if he would look at that, just to make sure that we're not having these anomalies in the system, that the very people who want to build are being prevented from build. And that's made worse by the 1% rent reduction, which again is quite difficult in terms of the way in which that impacts on the flexibility that councils need to have in terms of their own business plan, in our case a 30-year business plan. So overall that has an impact, a negative impact of some £10 million, which is a huge influence on the number of houses. We reckon that's 100 houses that we haven't been able to build and we would want to build. So I hope the Minister's listened. I'm not expecting him to come up with all the magic solutions, but we will work with the Minister. We're a good authority. We're an authority that want to overcome these problems with the lack of affordable housing, particularly council housing, and I hope that the Minister hears and will give us some knowledge that at least the government is willing to contemplate looking at the borrowing requirement and looking at the way in which the right to buy does affect authorities like Stroud.